Before the world introduces you to the concept of love, companionship, or loyalty through the lens of society, there exists a connection that predates all of it. It begins not in the classrooms of social learning, nor in the pages of self-help books, but in the quiet, simple moments of childhood. A sister is not only a sibling, she is the first female friend you never had to choose, and the one written into your life before your memory even knew how to recognize her significance. In a life that unfolds with complexity, she becomes the first symbol of feminine presence that is constant, grounding, and unshakably familiar. This bond is beyond blood because it teaches emotional truths before intellectual understanding ever arrives. There is a sacredness in having a sister that is often unspoken. It is not sacred because of grand gestures or rare heroic acts. It is sacred because of its consistency. From the earliest days, before you even begin forming words, she may be the first one who shares your toys or the first one who takes them away. In that simple exchange, a child unknowingly starts to understand sharing, boundaries, and emotion. She is your opponent in petty battles and your partner in imagined adventures. Each moment is not trivial, it is formative. She becomes the first mirror that reflects how you behave, what your words can cause, and how feelings rise and fall between two people who care deeply yet still struggle to understand the meaning of connection. The bond is not crafted in perfection. It matures through contradictions. Moments of affection interrupted by jealousy, arguments resolved by silent forgiveness, laughter echoing after sharp words. Through the sense of immaturity, innocence, and her presence anchors something vital. The awareness that relationships are not about flawlessness, but about endurance. You fight, but you stay. You disagree, but you remember. The bond survives because it was never based on agreement, it was based on origin. When a sister is present during childhood, she becomes a living example of the feminine energy that is intuitive, emotionally intelligent, and often misunderstood by young minds. Through her actions, reactions, and expressions, she transmits a frequency that is different from the masculine rhythm. Not better, not worse, just essential. It is through her tears that you first begin to feel the weight of empathy. It is through her words that you may first realize the power they hold. And it is through her silence that you learn how presence does not always require explanation. She becomes the first translator of emotions you yourself have not yet learned to name. Even when the age difference is vast and that the paths of life begin to diverge, the sister remains a rooted memory of origin. She holds the earlier versions of you that no one else has seen long before the world taught you who you are supposed to be. She was already speaking to who you actually were. She knew the raw version, the unfiltered feelings, the uncultivated spirit. She saw the tears behind the closed door and often chose to sit on the other side, not asking questions, just making sure she was there when the door opened again. The sacredness of this relationship lies in its timelessness. It does not require formal commitments, nor does it demand constant communication. It rests in the knowing that she existed beside you through the mundane, the magical, and the messy. She was there when no one else knew what mattered to you, and often she was the first to remind you of your value when the world tried to diminish it. her presence, whether quiet or expressive, marks the beginning of your relational life with women, shaping how you perceive, respond to, and respect the feminine. This friendship between siblings is different from all others because it is not chosen yet, deeply cherished. You don't become friends because of common interests. You become friends because of common roots. And in that soil of shared beginnings, something deeply human grows, a sense of mutual witnessing. She saw your firsts, your first fall, your first lie, your first secret, and though she may not have always responded perfectly, she was there. That presence itself is an uncelebrated form of love that we often only appreciate in hindsight. What we often overlook is that the relationship with a sister introduces one of the most important lessons early in life, the lesson of coexistence. You share space, time, and attention. You learn to listen not just to words, but to tones. You learn that feelings matter even when they are unspoken, and you begin to understand that love is not a perfect formula. It is a living presence that continues to evolve with time, but never abandons its roots. The sacred bond with a sister is not just about shared parents or childhood photos. It is the first field where the seeds of friendship with the feminine are sown, nurtured not by effort, but by existence itself. There is a silent intimacy in growing up beside someone who sees you before you learn to see yourself. A sister holds this role not by choice, but by fate, and through her proximity to your unfolding life, she becomes the first witness to your becoming. Unlike friends who meet you at certain chapters or parents who carry a role shaped by responsibility, a sister exists somewhere in between. She is close enough to observe without the pressure of guiding and distant enough to reflect without judgment. She watches your evolution not with the eyes of the world, but through the lens of shared beginnings. In the early years of childhood, before identity becomes something we consciously craft, a sister is already collecting impressions of who we are. She notices the way we laugh at small things, the way we cry when no one is watching, the way we retreat when overwhelmed. These small human details, invisible to others, become part of how she understands us. While the world often sees our performance, our sister sees our process. She sees the vulnerability behind our defiance, the confusion behind our confidence, and the longing behind our laughter. She does not need to analyze these things. She simply absorbs them over time through presence. It is not only what she sees, but when she sees it, that gives this connection its depth. She is there for the unedited versions of us. Before we learn how to guard ourselves, before we learn how to impress, she witnesses our raw emotions, our spontaneous joy, our unjustified anger, our irrational fears. These moments pass unnoticed by many, but a sister stores them, not always in words, but in memory. And because she sees these early patterns of our character, her perception of us carries an honesty that time cannot distort. There are times in life when the world demands a mask, when roles must be played and expressions must be measured. In such times, returning to a sister is like returning to a mirror that never lied. She reflects back not the person you became for the world, but the person you were becoming when no one was watching. She reminds you of moments you forgot, of truths you once carried before they were buried under expectations. She may not always articulate these memories, but her presence, her tone, her familiarity, it all reminds you of who you were at the beginning. Through the years, as the body changes, the voice deepens, the responsibilities multiply, and the face matures, a sister's memory of you remains untouched by these shifts. She remembers the trembling voice you had when you were scared. She remembers the way you used to explain your dreams with eyes full of fire. And even if life has dimmed some of that fire, she carries its memory on your behalf. That is the kind of witnessing that goes beyond observation. It becomes preservation. What deepens this role further is that her witnessing is not passive. She does not merely watch, she responds. Sometimes with protection, sometimes with provocation. She may challenge your decisions, push your limits, or defend your silence. She engages with your becoming not because she wants to shape it, but because she is naturally entangled in it. Her responses, even the difficult ones, help you understand the edges of your own growth. When she disagrees, she invites you to reflect. When she supports, she strengthens your resolve. And when she remains quiet, she creates the space for you to find your own answers. She grows with you, and in doing so, your transformations are not isolated experiences. They are shared evolutions. She watches your missteps not with scorn, but with recognition, because many of them mirror her own. She celebrates your wins not out of obligation, but out of a deep-rooted knowing of what those victories cost. There is a quiet celebration that happens when someone who has seen your lowest moments gets to see your rise. The applause may not be loud, but it carries more weight than all the recognition the world can offer. A sister, being the first female friend, also experiences her own becoming in parallel. This makes the bond multidimensional. You are not only being watched, you are also watching. Her growth becomes part of your landscape too. You learn from her mistakes, you inherit her strengths, you absorb her resilience. Through this shared journey, mutual understanding blossoms, not through explanation, but through witnessing. Each silently learns the other's rhythm, and that rhythm becomes part of your internal compass. Even in separation, even across years of distance, that rhythm echoes. The strength of this connection is not found in perfect harmony, but in shared witnessing. She saw your first attempts, your awkward transitions, your quiet failures. And because she was there when you had nothing to prove, she became the witness whose memory of you is not distorted by your current success or struggle. She sees the continuity in you, the threads that remain untouched by time, and her presence reawakens those threads when the world tries to erase them. Through her, you are reminded that the journey of becoming is never walked alone, even when it feels like it is. She was there when it all began, watching, holding, remembering. Not because she had to, but because she was always meant to. From the moment we are born, we begin to absorb the world, not through words, but through presence. Long before logic shapes our thoughts, feeling becomes our first language. And in this silent language, a sister becomes our earliest guide to the feminine essence. When she is older and paves the way, or younger and follows in your steps, her presence in childhood becomes a quiet but constant education in the subtleties of emotional depth, sensitivity, and relational nuance. Without intending to, she becomes the feminine compass that orients your understanding of emotion, intuition, and the complexity of human connection. In the chaos of growing up, a sister carries a different kind of energy into the room. While brothers might offer a direct and sometimes blunt rhythm to life, a sister brings something more layered, more delicate, yet equally strong. Through her expressions, her responses, her silences, and even her moods, you begin to witness how emotion is not a weakness, but a way of moving through life with honesty. She may cry when she feels something deeply or fall into silence when her emotions overwhelm her. And these actions teach without words. They show you how expression is not just physical, it is energetic. It is spiritual. Her sensitivity opens a door for you to become sensitive to, not just to her, but to the world within yourself and others. She teaches you, often unknowingly, how to be mindful of what is not said. You begin to notice the slight change in her tone when something has hurt her, even if she denies it. You sense when her joy is genuine and when it is performed. This ability to read between the lines, to feel beyond the surface, is one of the earliest gifts that having a sister brings. She does not sit you down to explain the emotional world. Instead, she lives it in front of you, and in doing so, invites you to notice, to listen, and to remember. Over time, your capacity to feel grows not from grand teachings, but from this simple daily witnessing of her emotional truth. Even when you argue, the undercurrent of feeling remains. A disagreement with a sister is rarely just about the surface level issue. There's always something deeper, the desire to be understood, the fear of being dismissed, the pain of not being heard. These emotional undercurrents are subtle yet profoundly human, and they teach you that connection isn't about always being right, but about remaining present through discomfort. The way she handles conflict, whether with fire or with withdrawal, becomes a lesson in itself. She may storm away or fall into quiet, but eventually she returns. And in that return is another lesson that love, when real, finds its way back even through emotional storms. A sister also brings a different type of nurturing into your world. She might tend to your wounds with more softness or remember small details about your preferences that others overlook, whether through a shared meal, a handwritten note, or simply sitting beside you in silence during difficult times. She embodies care in ways that are often instinctual. This form of nurturing is not about grand gestures, but about attunement. It teaches you how powerful presence can be when it is grounded in empathy rather than performance. Through her care, you begin to understand that strength and softness are not opposing forces. They can live together, and in fact, often must. She becomes the first female in your life to hold space for your emotions in a non-romantic context. This is vital. It allows you to experience vulnerability without the fear of losing respect. You learn that you can be open and still be loved, that your tears do not make you less, but reveal your capacity for depth. And perhaps most importantly, she teaches you that listening is a sacred act. When she listens to you, not to respond, but simply to understand, you feel what it means to be truly received. And in turn, you begin to mirror that for others. The feminine compass is not only about emotion, though it is also about rhythm, cycles, and the wisdom of knowing when to move and when to pause. She might retreat into solitude during certain phases of life and then reemerge with new insight. You see how she changes evolves, struggles, and transforms, and you begin to understand that life is not linear. Through her, you witness how healing is not rushed, how growth is sometimes quiet, and how strength often wears the face of patience. She may go through heartbreak, disappointment, or inner battles, and through it all, she carries herself with a grace that is not about perfection, but about authenticity. This too becomes part of your compass. As you grow, you may come to understand that much of what you learned about relationships, communication, and inner balance did not come from books or advice. It came from her. She taught you how to sense shifts in the emotional climate, how to soften when the moment requires it, and how to remain firm without becoming cold. She gave you an understanding of the feminine, not through explanation, but through embodiment. Her existence in your life gave you access to a part of humanity that might otherwise have remained distant or misunderstood. And in the silent, everyday interactions, she shaped the way you relate to the world of emotion and taught you how to navigate life with both strength and sensitivity. In the early stages of life, the bond between siblings is rarely graceful. It is often chaotic, filled with loud disagreements over seemingly insignificant things. Who gets the bigger piece? Who holds the remote? Who gets to be heard first? When the sibling is a sister, this dynamic introduces a unique complexity because the closeness is inevitable and the differences in thought and feeling are just as real. What begins as rivalry is not a flaw in the relationship, but an essential part of its formation. It is the fire in which the deeper connection is slowly forged. These conflicts become the training ground, not for separation, but for understanding. The rivalry is rarely about the surface matters. Beneath the argument about toys or time or attention, there is a more subtle competition at play, the desire to be seen, to be valued, to be understood. Both carry this desire, and in trying to fulfill it, they often push against each other. A sister challenges you not just with her words, but with her presence. Her way of thinking, feeling, and reacting might be so different from yours that it irritates, confuses, or provokes. And yet, in those very moments of discomfort, something valuable begins to take shape. You are being introduced to the reality that not everyone sees the world as you do, and that love is not dependent on similarity. It is born in the spaces where differences are acknowledged and still embraced. The sister, through this process, becomes the first person who teaches you how to coexist with someone whose mind is not your mirror. Her thoughts, her sensitivity, her pace, they may clash with yours, but they also expand you. You begin to develop emotional muscles you didn't know you needed. You learn patience when her reactions feel exaggerated. You learn compassion when she withdraws for reasons you don't understand. You learn to listen, not just to her words, but to the emotion beneath them. Over time, these early tensions start to evolve into a quiet respect. You may still argue, but now you understand what the argument is really about. It is not about winning, it is about being heard. As the years pass, the relationship begins to shift. The moments of rivalry become fewer and something else starts to take their place. There is a transition, often unnoticed, where you stop seeing her as the opponent and begin to see her as an ally. The sister who once competed with you for attention becomes the one who gives you attention when no one else does. The sister who once challenged your thoughts becomes the one who sharpens them. You begin to understand that the person who has seen you at your worst and stayed carries a kind of loyalty that cannot be replicated by anyone who came later in life. This reverence does not appear all at once. It grows quietly in the background of shared life. You notice it in the way she remembers small details about you. You hear it in the softness of her voice when you are going through something difficult. You feel it in the way she stands by you, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a kind of steady faith that you can always return to. Reverence is not about placing her on a pedestal. It is about recognizing the sacredness of what you share, the history, the healing, the silent understanding that only the two of you can fully access. What strengthens this transformation from rivalry to reverence is the archive of shared memories that no one else possesses. There are certain laughs that only she understands, certain phrases that carry weight only between the two of you, certain memories that need no explanation because she was there. These shared experiences become a kind of unspoken language. In this language, you find comfort. Even when life has taken you in completely different directions, even when time has placed distance between you, this language remains alive. She remembers who you were before the world changed you, and that remembering keeps you connected to your origin. The evolution of this relationship teaches you that deep bonds are not built by avoiding conflict, but by moving through it. Every argument, every misunderstanding, every season of silence holds the potential for growth. With a sister, you are given endless opportunities to practice patience, forgiveness, and presence. You learn that love is not the absence of struggle, but the decision to remain connected through it. And that realization transforms rivalry into something profound. It becomes a gateway to reverence, a state in which you begin to appreciate the depth of her presence in your life, not because she is perfect, but because she has stayed through every version of you and still chooses to walk beside you. Reverence means you begin to look at her differently. You see the strength behind her softness. You see the wisdom behind her silence. You see the courage it took for her to face her own challenges while still being there for you. And in recognizing these things, your relationship with her deepens. It becomes less about who you were and more about who you continue to become. Together, the journey from rivalry to reverence is not linear and it is not without wounds. But those very wounds, once healed, become the roots of a connection that can weather anything. A connection that holds you steady not just in moments of celebration, but more importantly, in the quiet storms that shape your inner world. There are certain people in life whose presence does not need to announce itself to be felt. A sister carries this kind of presence, quiet, consistent, often in the background, but powerful in the way it grounds you. While others may come and go depending on circumstances, mood, or mutual benefit, the presence of a sister has an unspoken safety built into it. This safety is not about protection in the physical sense alone. It is emotional, spiritual, and psychological. It's the kind of safety that allows you to be more than just functional. It allows you to be real in a world that often demands performance, masks, and carefully curated versions of yourself. The bond with a sister offers something rare a space where you do not need to impress. You do not need to earn her attention or prove your worth or fight to be seen. She already sees you, not because you have shown her a polished version of who you are, but because she was there when you had nothing to polish. She witnessed you when your emotions were unrefined, your thinking incomplete, your words impulsive, and instead of turning away, she stayed. That staying is what makes her presence safe. Not because she always agrees or always understands, but because she never uses your messiness as a reason to withdraw her love. Safety with a sister is experienced in small, often unnoticed moments. It's in the way she walks into the room and you immediately relax without realizing why. It's in the silence that doesn't feel awkward, the glance that doesn't need interpretation, the memory that doesn't need to be explained. She knows the backstory without needing to be reminded. She knows the scars even when you've stopped showing them. Her presence is a form of emotional homecoming. No matter how far you roam from yourself or from others, being with her brings a sense of return. Not necessarily to comfort, but to truth. There's a different kind of trust that forms when someone knows both your worst behaviors and your most fragile insecurities and still shows up. Friends may disappear during difficult phases. Romantic partners may misunderstand, but a sister has already endured your growing pains, your silent moods, your sharpest words. And somehow she still chooses to keep the connection alive. That choice, repeated over years and through countless changes, creates a sanctuary of familiarity. You begin to trust that she will not leave when you are not at your best. You begin to trust that her memory of you includes your flaws, but is not limited to them. She carries your fullness, and that fullness includes your broken pieces too. This unspoken safety also allows something else to happen: vulnerability. True vulnerability is not loud. It does not always look like crying or opening up in long conversations. Sometimes it's simply being around someone and not needing to pretend. Sometimes it's sitting together in silence because the words are too heavy, but knowing she understands anyway. This is a sacred kind of companionship, the kind where presence becomes the message and silence becomes the language. She does not always need to offer advice. She does not always need to fix what is broken. Her presence alone becomes the bridge between isolation and healing. A sister's presence also carries a sense of loyalty that is felt more than spoken. She might disagree with you fiercely, call you out when you are wrong, and even walk away during moments of emotional intensity. But beneath all of that, there is a thread that never snaps. It is woven from childhood memories, from the hundreds of hours spent in the same room, from knowing each other's fears and dreams before they had names. Even when anger surfaces or distance stretches the bond, the thread remains. You know she is still there. Not because she said it, but because she has always been. And perhaps the most profound part of this unspoken safety is how natural it feels. You do not need to earn it, negotiate it, or fight to keep it. It simply exists. It was born the day she entered your life, and it grew not because of effort, but because of shared time. And though life may take you in different directions, different cities, different priorities, different roles, the invisible connection remains intact. When something significant happens, She is still the one you want to tell when life becomes too heavy. She is still the one whose voice can bring you back to balance. She may not always know the right words, but she knows you. And that knowing is a kind of comfort no outsider can replicate. There's a peace that comes from knowing someone is there, not just during celebrations, but especially during quiet struggles. A sister is often the first person who teaches you this peace, not through grand declarations, but through quiet consistency. She may not always express her love in obvious ways, but it is in the way she remembers your habits, the way she notices your silences, the way she checks in without making it a big deal. These small actions form a protective layer around your emotional world. You begin to feel that even when everything else is shifting, her presence remains a stable axis. She may not always speak it, but her loyalty does not waver with the seasons of your life. It stands often quietly, but always undeniably present.